Once upon a time in the small town of Willowbrook, there lived a curious and adventurous young boy named Tommy. He was just 7 years old, and like most kids his age, he loved going on walks and exploring the world around him. However, this particular walk with his babysitter, Lisa, would become an unforgettable and chilling experience. It was a warm summer evening, and the sun was beginning to set as Tommy and Lisa strolled along the fairly busy road, making their way back to Tommy's house. The golden hues of the setting sun painted the sky with a mesmerizing display of colors, casting long shadows on the ground. "Hey, Tommy, how about we play a game to make our walk more fun?" Lisa suggested with a playful smile. Tommy's eyes lit up with excitement, and he nodded eagerly. "Sure, what game are we going to play?" "Let's play Simon Says," Lisa said, her voice cheerful and warm. The game started innocently enough. At first, they increased their pace, walking faster as Simon said. But then they began to skip and jog lightly when instructed, as Tommy followed the commands. He noticed a mischievous glint in Lisa's eyes. "Simon says run as fast as you can," Lisa declared, and Tommy obliged, sprinting with all his might. "Simon says turn here," she continued, pointing to a narrow driveway that led towards an old, secluded house. Tommy was slightly confused but trusted his babysitter and followed her instructions. As they rushed down the driveway, Tommy couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He turned his head back and saw two ominous figures closing in on them, one carrying a menacing bat, and the other clutching a gleaming knife. Fear gripped Tommy's heart, and he couldn't comprehend why anyone would be chasing them. Despite the terrifying situation, Lisa managed to keep a strong facade, guiding Tommy towards the house at the end of the driveway. Breathless and frightened, they reached the door of the house, and Lisa banged on it with urgency. An elderly couple answered the door, their worried eyes scanning the frantic duo. "Please, let us in. We're being chased," Lisa pleaded, gasping for breath. The elderly couple hurriedly ushered them inside and bolted the door shut. Tommy's heart pounded loudly in his ears as he clung to Lisa's side, trying to make sense of what was happening. "What's going on?" Tommy finally managed to ask, his voice trembling. The old man exchanged a solemn glance with his wife before answering. "You two should not have come here. This house has a dark history, and its shadows are relentless." Confused and frightened, Tommy and Lisa listened as the couple told them a haunting tale about the house they had sought refuge in. Legend had it that many years ago, the house belonged to a sinister man who had committed terrible atrocities, and the malevolent spirits of his victims still haunted the place. People claimed to have seen shadowy figures lurking around the property, seeking revenge on any trespassers. Tommy couldn't believe what he was hearing, but the sight of the menacing individuals outside the window reminded him that they were still in danger. The shadows on the walls seemed to dance and twist as if mocking their desperation. As the night grew darker, the couple offered Tommy and Lisa some tea to calm their nerves. With trembling hands, Tommy took a sip, trying to push the fear away. Lisa, although concerned for Tommy, was also starting to piece together the situation. "Who were those men, and why were they chasing us?" Lisa asked the elderly couple. The old woman hesitated before speaking. "We don't know the reasons, but those shadows are relentless in their pursuit. We have seen others seek refuge here before, but they were never the same after facing those dark forces." The gravity of the situation began to sink in. Tommy and Lisa were trapped in a house haunted by vengeful spirits and pursued by sinister figures. Outside, the night wore on, and Tommy found it impossible to sleep. Every creak and shadow seemed to magnify his terror. Lisa stayed awake too, determined to protect Tommy from whatever might come their way. As the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, the pursuing figures outside vanished, and the atmosphere inside the house eased slightly. Tommy and Lisa thanked the old couple profusely for their help and decided it was time to leave. The journey back home was filled with tension, as both Tommy and Lisa feared they might encounter the shadows once more. They hurried along the road, their hearts pounding in their chests. Upon reaching Tommy's house, they were greeted by the worried faces of Tommy's parents, who had been searching for them all night. The relief of being back home was overshadowed by the haunting memories of their encounter with. In the weeks that followed, Tommy and Lisa tried their best to forget the horrors they had faced, but the events of that night had left an indelible mark on their young minds. They vowed never to speak of the shadows again, hoping that by burying the memories, they could leave the darkness behind. However, as time passed, strange occurrences began to plague Tommy and Lisa. Shadows seemed to linger longer, and whispers echoed in the darkness of their dreams. The malevolent presence they encountered that night refused to be forgotten, and they couldn't escape the feeling that they were being watched, even in the safety of daylight. In the quiet town of Millbrook, nestled amidst rolling hills and lush forests, lived a young man named Alex. He was an adventurous soul with a love for nature's beauty, especially during thunderstorms. On one stormy night, with rain pouring relentlessly from the heavens, Alex lay in his room on the second floor, trying to find solace in sleep. The soft patter of raindrops on the roof should have been comforting, but the booming thunder and dazzling lightning strikes made it impossible for him to drift into slumber. Determined to overcome the restlessness, he kept the blinds of his window open, hoping that the mesmerizing dance of rain and lightning would lull him to sleep. As the night wore on, the storm intensified, unleashing its fury upon the town. Just as Alex finally felt his eyes growing heavy, a deafening clap of thunder tore through the night, jolting him awake. He sighed in frustration, wondering if he would ever get a peaceful night's rest. As he lay in bed, trying to find a comfortable position, another brilliant flash of lightning illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Alex turned his gaze towards the window, mesmerized by the spectacle outside. But in that fleeting moment of light, he saw something that made his heart skip a beat. A figure was standing on the covered porch just outside his window, trying to pry it open. Panic surged through his veins as he realized that an intruder was attempting to break into his room. The adrenaline kicked in, and Alex knew he had to act quickly. He recalled the baseball bat he kept under his bed for self-defense. Without making a sound, he slowly reached for it, keeping his eyes on the intruder outside. The stranger must have sensed something was amiss, for just as Alex's hand closed around the bat's handle, their eyes locked. Fear and surprise flashed across the intruder's face, and he swiftly leaped off the porch, disappearing into the night. Alex's heart pounded in his chest, and he felt a mixture of relief and fear coursing through him. He couldn't believe what had just happened. A burglar had been mere moments away from entering his room while he lay sleeping. Gathering his courage, Alex rushed to the window to get a better look at the trespasser. Raindrops splattered against the glass, distorting his view. He strained his eyes, trying to make out any trace of the man, but he was gone, swallowed by the darkness and the torrential downpour. Feeling shaken, Alex decided to call the police to report the attempted break-in. As he spoke to the dispatcher, he couldn't help but wonder why someone would target his seemingly ordinary home. He had no valuable possessions that would attract thieves, and Millbrook was known for its low crime rate. The police arrived swiftly and searched the area around the house, but there was no sign of the intruder. They assured Alex that they would patrol the neighborhood more frequently during the stormy nights and advised him to keep his windows and doors securely locked. In the following days, Alex couldn't shake off the lingering sense of unease. He became hyper-aware of his surroundings, especially during storms. The once comforting sound of rain now triggered anxiety, and he couldn't bear to keep his windows open like he used to. As the weeks passed, the incident faded from the town's memory, but not from Alex's mind. He became obsessed with finding answers, determined to understand why he had been targeted. Was it a random act of burglary, or was there something more sinister at play? Late one night, unable to sleep, Alex began researching local crime history, hoping to find any clues that might shed light on the mysterious intruder. His investigation led him to an old newspaper article about a series of unsolved burglaries that occurred in Millbrook several years ago. One of the victims had reported seeing a shadowy figure lurking near their window during a thunderstorm, just like what Alex had experienced. The revelation sent shivers down his spine, and he couldn't ignore the chilling coincidence. Was it possible that the same intruder had returned after all these years? If so, why had he chosen Alex's house? Determined to put an end to the haunting mystery, Alex sought the help of a seasoned private investigator named Detective Morgan. The detective was intrigued by Alex's story and agreed to assist him in unraveling the truth behind the elusive intruder. Together, they delved deeper into the cold case files and interviewed the victims of the past burglaries. As they pieced together the puzzle, a disturbing pattern emerged. All the burglaries had taken place during thunderstorms, and each victim reported seeing a shadowy figure outside their windows before the break-ins. Detective Morgan was convinced that they were dealing with a cunning and methodical criminal who used storms as a cover for his nefarious activities. But as they dug further, they discovered something even more unsettling. All the victims had one common link. They were witnesses to a crime years ago, but the perpetrator had never been caught. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, revealing a chilling connection between the past and the present. The shadowy figure haunting Millbrook was seeking revenge on those who had testified against him years ago, and now, Alex had become his latest target. As the stormy nights persisted, Alex and Detective Morgan worked tirelessly to track down the elusive criminal. With each new piece of evidence, they drew closer to the truth, but the stakes were higher than ever. The shadowy figure seemed to be one step ahead, leaving behind only traces of his chilling presence. In a heart-pounding showdown, Alex and Detective Morgan finally cornered the vengeful intruder, revealing his true identity and the dark secrets he had been harboring for years. Justice was served, but the encounter left a lasting scar on Alex's psyche. In the aftermath of the ordeal, the stormy nights in Millbrook gradually lost their haunting power over Alex. He learned to find solace in the support of friends and family, who helped him heal from the trauma. The town remained vigilant, ensuring that its residents were safe from the shadows lurking in the storm. As for Alex, he emerged from the harrowing experience stronger, with a newfound appreciation for the sanctity of his home and the bonds that protected him from the darkness that lay just beyond the windows. The thunderstorms continued to rage, but Alex had conquered the shadows, proving that even in the face of the most chilling mysteries, courage and determination could prevail. In the quiet suburban town of Greenwood, nestled between rolling hills and picturesque landscapes, lived a young single mother named Dorothy Jane Scott. She had a sweet, little toddler son named Tommy, who was the light of her life. Dorothy worked as a secretary at a local company, trying to make ends meet and provide a good life for her beloved boy. One fateful morning, as the sun's rays filtered through the curtains, Dorothy arrived at work, ready to tackle the day's tasks. However, her excitement soon turned to anxiety when she started receiving mysterious, threatening phone calls. At first, she brushed them off as some cruel prank or wrong number. The voice on the other end would alternate between declarations of love and sinister threats. As the days passed, the calls became more frequent and menacing, making Dorothy's heart race with each ring. The voice sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place who it belonged to. She shared her concerns with her colleagues, hoping they might have some insight into the mystery caller. However, nobody seemed to recognize the voice. One night, after a particularly unnerving call, the voice instructed her to look outside. Fearful yet curious, Dorothy stepped outside the office building, her heart pounding in her chest. On her car's windscreen was a single withered rose, its petals wilting like the hope she had for these calls to cease. As days turned into weeks, Dorothy's life became a haunting blend of fear and uncertainty. The calls continued relentlessly, making her feel like she was living in a never-ending nightmare. Her colleagues noticed the toll it was taking on her, but no one could provide any real help in identifying the mysterious caller. One afternoon during a staff meeting, Dorothy noticed that one of her coworkers, Mark, appeared unwell. His face was pale, and he seemed to be struggling to breathe. Concerned for his well-being, Dorothy and another coworker, Sarah, decided to take Mark to a neighboring hospital for medical attention. Leaving Mark in the hospital's care, Sarah and Dorothy decided to wait outside while the prescriptions were being filled. As they stood in the hospital parking lot, Dorothy's mind wandered back to the torment of the threatening calls. She hoped for a moment of respite, but little did she know, fate had something entirely different in store. While Sarah and Dorothy waited outside the hospital, a chilling silence enveloped them. Sarah was engrossed in her phone, and Dorothy looked around nervously, her thoughts drifting back to her little boy, Tommy, waiting for her at home. Suddenly, Dorothy excused herself, feeling an urgent need to get some fresh air. She walked a few steps away, looking up at the night sky, trying to clear her head. But when she turned back to rejoin Sarah, she was nowhere to be found. Panicked, Dorothy rushed back inside the hospital, searching for Sarah, but there was no trace of her. Her heart pounded as she realized that she was alone and something was terribly wrong. She decided to head back to her car to call for help. When she noticed a familiar vehicle speeding away from the hospital parking lot, her own car, fear and desperation consumed her as she called the police to report the strange disappearance of Sarah and the theft of her car. As the investigation began, her coworkers shared their testimonies. corroborating that Dorothy had indeed been outside the hospital waiting for Sarah. But she had vanished without a trace. In the days that followed, the police conducted an extensive search for Dorothy. The mysterious phone calls now took a backseat as the priority shifted to finding her and solving the puzzle of her inexplicable disappearance. Dorothy's family and friends, heartbroken and terrified, prayed for her safe return. Meanwhile, little Tommy, too young to comprehend the gravity of the situation, waited eagerly for his mother to come home. But days turned into weeks, and Dorothy remained missing, leaving a void in the lives of those who loved her. As the police delved deeper into the case, they discovered more about Dorothy's life, her struggles as a single mother, and the unsettling phone calls she had been receiving. They also couldn't ignore the possibility that the troubled coworker, Mark, might be connected to her disappearance. Despite their relentless efforts, the police could not find any conclusive evidence linking Mark to Dorothy's vanishing. The calls had stopped, and Mark had an alibi for the night Dorothy disappeared. The case grew colder with time, and the town was left haunted by the unanswered mystery. Years passed, and Dorothy Jane Scott became a name etched in the town's memory, a cautionary tale of the shadows that sometimes lurk in the corners of our lives. Her family never gave up hope, still clinging to the belief that one day she might return. But the truth remained elusive, and the enigma of Dorothy's disappearance continued to cast a long, dark shadow over Greenwood. The withered rose, once a symbol of an obsessed stalker, now stood as a silent testament to the mystery that consumed a young woman's life. And so, Dorothy Jane Scott's story remains a chilling reminder that sometimes, the darkness we cannot comprehend is the most terrifying of all.